have the utmost respect for him, and the reason they have the utmost respect for him is they see what he has to go through every day, every hour.
I don't really see myself as a role model in that sense, but I know I am, and I just the biggest thing about diabetes is you're normal like everybody else. You take control, and that's how I feel.
That's a testament to our team, honestly, because Adam can really play. He can really go. And for him to take a step back and to do things like that really helped us get to that championship level.
You've seen the pictures from that 2006 draft day. Michael Jordan in a tailored suit, looking sharp as always, standing next to a lanky white kid with a scrappy mustache and wild hair. That kid is Adam Morrison, number 3 overall pick. What you don't see in those photos is what everybody around Morrison could smell. This is not a story about one bad player. This is the story of how a top NBA talent became the one guy his teammates genuinely could not stand being around. Not because he was bad at basketball, not because he caused drama on the court, but because of something much simpler and much more visceral. He smelled. And the story of why is way more complicated than just guy didn't shower. The NBA locker room is a unique space. It's cramped. It's hot. Guys are sweating for hours every single day. They share showers and benches and buses. They're packed together in ways that normal jobs never require. In that environment, something like personal hygiene isn't just about you. It's about everyone. It's a communal obligation. When one person fails to meet that standard, everybody pays the price. The smell lingers in the air you breathe. It sits on the shared equipment. It becomes impossible to ignore. His failure to maintain basic hygiene poisoned the entire locker room. Before we go deeper, if you're enjoying how weird and wild this actually is, hit the hype button and give this video some hype. This story gets so much crazier from here, and honestly, it deserves some love. Now let's rewind and see why a millionaire professional athlete became a locker room legend for all the wrong reasons. This isn't just about being dirty. This is about culture clash and burnout, and the impossible pressure of being a top pick. The real story starts not in Charlotte, but in Los Angeles. This is where the positive side of Adam Morrison lives. It's 2009 and Morrison gets traded to the Lakers. He arrives as a bench warmer, a guy nobody expects to contribute anything significant. But here's where something unexpected happens. Kobe Bryant, the man who was famous for making teammates uncomfortable, for demanding everything, for being brutally honest about your shortcomings, actually defended Adam Morrison. Number 5. Kobe looked at this kid and saw something everyone else in Charlotte missed. Kobe said he was a different cat. People talk about him. People mock him. People make jokes. But he's a champion. He put in the work, regardless of what people say about his style or his appearance or his habits. That's the real Kobe moment. Not the scoring or the championships or the incredible performances. It's defending the one guy most players would have roasted without hesitation. Kobe could have gone along with the narrative. He could have laughed at Morrison's smell like everyone else. He could have made fun of the 3 polos. Instead, he respected him. Why did Kobe actually care? Morrison understood basketball deeply. He accepted his role without complaining. He wasn't fighting anybody or demanding the ball. He knew he wasn't the star, and he was completely fine with that. Most players get defensive when they're relegated to the bench. Most players pout. Most players quit mentally. Not Morrison. He was a coach's son. He understood basketball deeply. He studied the game. He knew the triangle offense. He knew how to be useful in a system, even when he wasn't scoring. He knew how to be a good teammate. And he won rings. 2 of them. The Lakers won back-to-back titles with Morrison on the roster. He was there. He contributed to a winning culture. He experienced championship basketball at the highest level. Here's the thing about winning. It changes absolutely everything. When you're winning, nobody cares what anybody wears or how much they shower. The smell doesn't matter as much when there's a trophy. Winning sanitizes all the flaws. A championship ring looks the same whether you wore 3 polos or 300. That's what happened in LA. The Marcus Morrison who would have been mocked in Charlotte was protected and accepted in Los Angeles because they were winning. The locker room was different. The coach Phil Jackson was different. The teammates were different. The culture was different. And most importantly, the results were different. Winning championship games makes everything else fade away. That's number 5, the redemption side. The part of the story that proves the hate wasn't permanent, and that context matters more than character flaws. But to understand why the hate even existed, we have to go back to the beginning. And the beginning is Mark Few at Gonzaga University. Number 4, Few is the coach who actually knew Morrison first. He saw the hygiene issues years before the NBA did, and he handled it completely differently than Gerald Wallace would ever handle it. Few didn't force anything. He was smart about it. He would tell Morrison, You even have time for a shower today. That's why I moved the practice time back so you could get a good shower. Few understood something important about Adam. He was diabetic. He was managing an insulin pump every single day. He was a college icon. He was surrounded by love and protection at Gonzaga. The team bent around him. Morrison grew up in that system. At Gonzaga, being grungy and different was part of his brand. It made him interesting. It made him unique. The mustache, the hippie vibe, the lack of polish. It all fit the narrative of an eccentric genius. College protected that. College enabled it. College made jokes about it instead of forcing him into showers. But college is not the NBA. That's the culture shock nobody talks about. Gonzaga was a place where the coach moves practice to help you shower. The NBA is a place where a teammate physically forces you to shower. Few's strategy was accommodation and understanding. The NBA's strategy would be force. Now let's get to the executive side of this. Number 3, Michael Jordan, the greatest player ever, the man with impeccable style, the guy who wore custom suits and carried himself with absolute discipline and control. Jordan had just taken over the Bobcats front office. He was building something new, and his first major move, his signature draft pick, was Adam Morrison at number 3. Morrison had the skills, he had the college resume, he had the diabetes story that was starting to define him publicly. But what Jordan didn't realize was that he was drafting a kid who didn't fit his aesthetic or his expectations at all. Jordan demanded a specific kind of excellence. It wasn't just about on-court performance. It was about presentation. It was about discipline in every area. Jordan believed that if you couldn't discipline yourself to shower, to wear clean clothes, to maintain basic standards, how could you discipline yourself to defend LeBron James? How could you execute a complex triangle offense? Hygiene became a symbol for Jordan. It wasn't actually about the smell. It was about what the smell meant. It meant Morrison didn't care. It meant Morrison was wasting his talent. It meant the draft pick was already failing. And Morrison was failing. He struggled with the speed of the NBA. He tore his ACL. The on-court problems and the off-court problems started blending together in Jordan's mind. Jordan saw the 3 polos, the tobacco spit, the refusal to shower, and he saw a bust. He saw a guy who didn't respect the opportunity he'd been given, and that reflection on Morrison's character became the narrative. It wasn't, he's struggling because of injury. It was, he's struggling because he doesn't care. And we know he doesn't care because he won't even shower. That brings us to Gerald Wallace and the moment that changed everything. Number 2, Wallace was the captain of those Bobcats. He was the leader. The team was losing. The franchise was struggling. Wallace had to hold it all together. And Morrison became the breaking point. Wallace wasn't just frustrated about the smell. He was frustrated because the team was broken. When you're losing, small things become huge. A smelly teammate isn't charming anymore. He's a symbol of everything wrong. So one day, Wallace had enough. According to Jared Dudley, Wallace literally forced Morrison to take a shower. Not asked, not suggested. Forced. Imagine that. Imagine your teammate physically dragging you to the shower because you won't go on your own. That's not hazing. That's not typical locker room stuff. That's humiliation. That's a teammate treating you like a child. And in that moment, Morrison's status in Charlotte changed forever. He went from being a weird guy with bad habits to being the pariah, the guy that the captain had to parent. When you've gotten to that point with a locker room, respect is almost impossible to get back. Wallace's actions sent a message to everyone else. This guy is not one of us. He's a problem we have to manage. He's not a peer. And all of this circles back to the foundation of the whole story. Number 1, Jared Dudley. Dudley was Morrison's teammate. He was in the locker room. He experienced everything. And when he was asked years later to name the dirtiest player he'd ever been around, Morrison was his immediate answer. Dudley didn't hold back. He called Morrison the most disgusting teammate he'd ever encountered. He broke it down into specifics. Morrison rarely took showers. Morrison chewed tobacco and spit constantly, not just occasionally, all the time. Dudley could still see it happening. And Morrison wore the same 3 polos the entire year, not 3 shirts rotating throughout the season. The same 3, over and over. Think about that. You're a top 3 pick making millions of dollars. You have every resource, and you're wearing the same 3 shirts for 12 months. Dudley wasn't just grossed out, he was confused. He was frustrated. This guy had money, he had opportunity, he had access to everything. Why would he choose to be dirty? That's what got to the locker room. It wasn't just the smell, it was the choice behind the smell. It felt deliberate. It felt like a rejection of NBA standards. But here's where the diabetes part matters. Morrison had been managing type 1 diabetes since he was 14. An insulin pump is complicated. Disconnecting it to shower, protecting the site, reconnecting it. For thousands of diabetics, this is routine. But for a young man burning out, for a guy going from college hero to NBA disappointment, for someone living under microscope because Michael Jordan drafted him, the extra steps might have felt impossible. Dudley and Wallace and Jordan, they saw the refusal to shower as proof of apathy. But what if it was something else? What if Morrison was depressed? What if the diabetes was wearing on him? What if he was overwhelmed? Dudley himself said Morrison was the face of diabetes. He was doing all the right things publicly, making appearances, being the role model, handling a serious disease. But behind the scenes, he was falling apart hygiene-wise. That's a classic sign that something deeper is happening. The teammates focused on the result, the smell. They didn't consider the cause, the burnout, the pressure, the overwhelming feeling of being a failure in your dream job while managing a chronic disease. But here's what matters most. Morrison survived all of it. He won championships, 2 of them. He played with Kobe Bryant. He was part of a historic Lakers team, and then he moved into broadcasting. Today, Morrison is a radio analyst for Gonzaga University. He hosts podcasts. He talks basketball with intelligence and insight. The stories about the 3 polos and the forced shower, they're told as legend now. They're funny. They're told with laughter, not anger. Jared Dudley tells them on radio shows and everybody laughs. It's become part of NBA history, the weird locker room legend, the story of the guy who wouldn't shower but still won rings. Here's what that tells you about the whole thing. The hate that Morrison faced, it wasn't actually about cruelty. It was about enforcement. It was about the locker room policing itself. The NBA is a space of extreme physical proximity. Guys share showers, share buses, share hotel rooms sometimes. When one person violates the basic standard of cleanliness, it affects everybody. Gerald Wallace forcing that shower wasn't bullying. It was leadership, even if it was harsh leadership. It was him saying, we have standards here, and you have to meet them. The culture of the locker room was cracking down on a breach of the social contract. Teammates weren't being mean for fun. They were being mean because they felt disrespected. And maybe Morrison learned something from all of it. Maybe the harshness of the NBA corrected something that college never could correct. Maybe losing his spot, facing the real pressure, winning in Los Angeles, and proving himself in a championship culture, maybe that changed him. Or maybe he just learned to hide it better. Maybe he learned that in the NBA, you don't have the luxury of being different the way you can in college. You have to assimilate. You have to respect the space you share. You have to understand that freshness, cleanliness, presentation, these things are currency in the locker room. The real story of Adam Morrison is not that he was a bad guy, it's that he was unprepared for the culture he was entering. He came from a world where his eccentricity was protected and enabled. He entered a world where it was punished. The smell became the symbol of that clash. 2 worlds colliding, the white counterculture aesthetic of grunge and authenticity crashing into the black culture of the NBA that places a premium on a presentation and freshness. That's not something Dudley or Wallace or Jordan were thinking about consciously, but it's the undercurrent. Morrison wasn't just failing to shower, he was rejecting the presentation standards that the NBA demands, and the NBA responded by forcing him to conform. But Kobe understood something different. Kobe operated on a plane where winning mattered more than anything else. Kobe had broken teammates. Kobe had made teammates cry, but Kobe also knew that if you could win together, that erased everything else. Morrison put in work. Morrison was smart. Morrison fit the system. Morrison helped you win. That was enough for Kobe. That was the version of the story where Morrison was redeemed, not because he changed who he was, but because context changed. Winning changes everything. A championship erases the smell of sweat. 2 titles make 3 polos look like the uniform of a champion. And that's the real lesson here. The hate wasn't permanent. Morrison wasn't permanently ruined. He survived a brutal and difficult introduction to professional basketball. He won. He moved on to a successful life in broadcasting where he talks basketball with real knowledge and insight. The locker room legends about him aren't told with anger anymore. They're told with laughter and nostalgia. They're proof that even the biggest stories in sports are way more complicated than they seem on the surface. Even the guy everyone hated had a real reason for his struggles. Even the story about basic hygiene touches on depression, diabetes, and culture shock, and the impossible pressure of being a top pick in the NBA. Morrison's journey is a reminder that shame has a shorter shelf life than we think. This is Adam Morrison's story. The player who became a legend not for what he did on the court, but for everything that happened in the locker room and how he survived it. And somehow, against all odds, he still won.